Hello, bonjour Tanzi. Je voudrais parler en français et après ça en anglais. En tant que sénatrice du Manitoba, je reconnais que je vis sur le territoire du traité 1. Je reconnais que je vis sur le territoire du traité 1, le territoire traditionnel des Anishinaabe, des Cris, des Ojibwe, des Dakota et des Nez, et la patrie de la nation métisse. Je tiens à souligner que le Parlement du Canada est situé sur un territoire algonquin, Anishinaabe, non cédé et non restitué. Je tiens également à souligner que de nombreuses personnes de partout sur l'île de la Tortue se joignent à nous aujourd'hui, qu'elles soient situées sur les terres cédées ou non cédées. I want to begin this session before I hand this over to the Center for Global Education to say how delighted I am by the months and months of work that are represented in our presentation today, to salute the Center for Global Education based in Edmonton and Taking IT Global for being the anchors and the inspiring hosts of this project. And I want to thank my team, Hannah and Jasmine and John Inca, for all of the hard work day after day that they have put in. But it's hard work, but it's also been so enjoyable. Already we've had sessions beginning about last fall with the students that we're going to hear from today and many other students who are part of their work teams and their teachers, and a number of parliamentarians have already been able to join us for some of those sessions that started to occur last October. Today, we've had a wonderful turnout of senators and members of parliament, and I just want to thank every one of you because I have some sense of how difficult it is to choose what you're going to spend your time on when we deal with so much in the way of invitations and also in demands on our time. To the panel of responders that you will hear from after the students have presented, Michael Furtick from Taking IT Global, Sarah Austin from Children First, Zachary Robichaud, who is one of my youth advisors on our Canadian Council of Young Feminists, and from Newfoundland, Member of Parliament Scott Sims. We would not have our school from Newfoundland were it not for Scott helping us find and facilitate that invitation. And certainly, last but not least in my mention, teachers and students who have worked with us for months on this project. Let me turn this over now to Terry Galdwelt. Terry and Sarah will anchor the rest of the program, and I'll get to join my colleagues, my parliamentarian friends, in being able to listen to what young people have to tell us about what they have decided in terms of Vote 16. Vote says.
Thank you so very much, Senator McPhedran, and thank you for the leadership that you have provided. Thank you for the exceptional leadership of the youth who are a part of the steering committee, the Vote 16 steering committee, a part of the Canadian Council of Young Feminists, the Conseil Canadien de Jeunes Féministes. Friends, I'm joining you from Treaty 6, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis people. And I am absolutely thrilled to play a very small role as we hand it over to our hosts, the young people who are representing the hundreds of youth who have spent thousands of hours systematically researching and dialoguing, coming together on a weekly basis, writing blogs, connecting through social media, delving deeply into the complexity of voting and representation here in Canada. as they share with you today the national report and the presentation that they have done. Once again, from coast to coast to coast, right? They are representing coastal communities, they are representing northern communities, they are representing big cities, small cities, the prairies, doesn't matter what. And that ultimately comes 16 different centers in this country have come together to do this work. So without any further ado, I do want to acknowledge the work that once again, the steering committee has done. The project has been led by Sarah Flynn at the Center for Global Education, who's really facilitated so much of this dialogue under the vision of Senator McPhedran and her working group. So without any further ado, let's pass it over to our hosts and the stars who have done all the work for today. Youth, over to you.
Hello to everyone who is joining us today for our presentation. Senators, MPs, ministers, members of the PMO's office, academics, and NGOs who have seen this presentation from the start. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to meet with us and listen to our concerns. This exciting Vote 16 project would not have been possible without the Center for Global Education and Taking It Global. CGE works with students across Canada and around the world to empower youth through connection and collaboration. Taking It Global helps youth to learn about and understand the importance of global challenges. Now to zoom on to the Vote 16 project. Between October and December 2020, students across Canada met through a virtual classroom to learn about and discuss the many factors of a proposal this big. After discussions, Zoom sessions, emails, and our national youth survey, 10 students have prepared this presentation summarizing all the ideas of the intense research, beliefs, and opinions we have heard and acknowledged over the past 5 months. We hope you enjoy our presentation and consider all the factors we present to you about our visions for the future of Canadian youth and government change. We will be happy to hear any questions, comments, or concerns at the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Edison Tan, and I'm from West Point Grey Academy in Vancouver, British Columbia. On behalf of all my peers who've worked incredibly hard on this project, I would like to acknowledge that we're on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. I think it's important to acknowledge this land because growing up as an immigrant here, I never heard the traditional names of these territories, and I think it's extremely important for these names to be recognized and respected. And while we meet today on a virtual platform, I think connecting communities across Canada, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of these lands that we call home. And we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. I'll pass it on now to Maria, who will talk about youth who are involved in this project.
Hello, my name is Mariah Mayer. I am a grade 11 student at Collège Jean Sauvé in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It is my privilege and honor to be here today alongside the amazing people who have worked so hard on this project. Vote 16 is important to me because it highlights the importance of bringing new ideas and perspectives to the table. The project was put together by students from coast to coast to coast with 15 schools involved. However, this project did not happen overnight, and there were quite a few steps to take before we got here. So without further ado, we have Peyton, who is going to discuss how we got to this point.
Hi, my name is Peyton. I'm from Springbank Community High School in Calgary, Alberta. I've always been passionate about community work, whether it's inside or outside of school. It has been an honor to be a part of Vote 16, as it has given me an opportunity to speak on behalf of the youth of Canada. Today, I'll be talking you through the process that led to our final Vote 16 report. This project began in the months between October and December. Over 100 students across the country met virtually to discuss the potential of legally changing the voting age to 16. During this time, youth between the ages of 13 and 19 were given the opportunity to share and discuss their opinions in regards to the current voting age and the possibility of lowering it. Amongst the participants of these calls were international youth leaders, members of the Senate, academic, and private sector experts. These guests informed and engaged with us, sharing their knowledge on voting and listening to our thoughts and opinions. Simultaneously, the participants had the opportunity to post and interact with one another on the Vote 16 blog page. To reach even more voices across Canada, a national youth survey was conducted. Over 400 people participated, answering the question, do you believe 16-year-olds should have the right to vote? Furthermore, participants answered who they believe to have the greatest influence on the voting opinions of 16-year-olds and when they believe this change should be put into action. As the virtual classrooms came to an end, a total of 10 students spanning across the country volunteered to join the writing team for the final report. One of the biggest challenges met during our project was technology. Collaborating, sharing, and understanding one another was difficult to achieve over virtual meetings. A lack of in-person communication caused difficulties in gathering and organizing everyone's thoughts and ideas. Despite the challenges, every youth involved felt a great deal of pride and accomplishment upon the completion of our paper. Now Anushka will be explaining why this change is so important.
Thanks, Peyton. My name is Anushka, and I'm 16 years old. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, where I go to West Point Grey Academy, and I enjoy skiing, reading, and debating. And as a young person with a lot of political opinions, I care about enabling youth to meaningfully participate in government. So what I'm going to be discussing is why it is that lowering the voting age is important to us as youth, because I think that throughout this process, we spent a lot of time pondering like the philosophical justification behind youth voting. And I think this requires us to consider for a moment why it is that anyone has the right to vote to begin with in a democratic country. And in many cases, it's probably because they pay taxes, which applies to some extent to kids age 16. Many of us do have jobs and pay income taxes, and most of us pay sales taxes when we go to stores and buy various things. But I think that probably the deeper reason why voting is necessary is because it rectifies the power imbalance between the state and the individual, which is to say, in a concrete way, that as 16 and 17-year-olds, we can be punished for committing crimes, we can be sent to jail or prison, but we have no say in deciding the laws by which we are governed. And even in the context of a global pandemic, one thing that's been really frustrating for us is the fact that we're all affected every day by government policies on vaccination, lockdown, things like school policies even. But we simultaneously have no capacity to influence those outcomes. So voting is a measure by which we can have our voices heard. And to that extent, we think lowering the voting age fulfills sort of a moral obligation on the part of the Canadian government. So the second thing I want to comment on is a common argument against voting at age 16, because we hear often that youth are too uninformed and uneducated to make rational political choices, and that as a consequence, we ought to be excluded, to which we have a few objections. Firstly, that the right to representation isn't necessarily contingent upon education and experience. So if it were, maybe we would give voters with higher IQ more voting power than voters who dropped out of high school. Or maybe we would only give voting rights to people who went to university. But clearly that would be unjust. And the reason why is because we value democratic rights intrinsically, and because we think voting is important on a principled level, irrespective of whether people are smart or qualified to make decisions that we subjectively perceive to be good. But the second thing I want to observe is that we aren't necessarily that uninformed on issues that matter to us. So our generation often has a lot of knowledge on contemporary problems like climate change, like digital rights issues, and racial justice. And look, do all of us read the Globe and Mail over coffee every morning? Probably not. But thousands of youth participated in the climate strike this year, and regardless of whether we think that specific political cause is good, this suggests that many youth are engaged in politics and that we do care about what's going on in the world around us, and that there are some issues that are arguably even more relevant to us than to older generations. But the third thing is that a lack of education is not really inherent. So if youth are currently uninformed, perhaps that's an indication that we ought to improve access to information, not that people our age simply don't deserve political representation at all. So we're going to discuss later in this presentation why expanding civic education in schools can help to rectify the lack of information among some youth, and how promoting youth advocacy can help us to take initiative in our own education. And with that in mind, I'll hand it over to Max.
Thank you, Anushka. Hi, my name is Maxwell Cooper, and I'm a grade 9 student at Exploits Valley Intermediate in Newfoundland and Labrador. And as Anushka said, I'm going to talk about education on politics or lack thereof. As we all know, when we make important decisions, it's always better to be knowledgeable about your options, be it pursuing post-secondary education, starting a family, or engaging in different activities like sports or activities in arts and culture. When people aren't aware of their options or aren't knowing of their situations, that's when we have a greater possibility of negative consequences like accidental pregnancies, receiving lackluster post-secondary education, or feeling forced into activities that you just don't enjoy. Education is a very powerful and open tool. Anyone can use it. But when we are not educated, we cannot make informed decisions, which thus leads to less than favorable situations. Particularly, being educated about politics can cause many life-changing differences. For example, when a voter learns what policies different parties are offering on all levels of government, that voter can make a better, informed decision when it comes to voting. When it comes to us youth and political education, there is no enforced part of any post-secondary curriculum that includes political education. Therefore, this gap in education has to be filled by parents, teachers, media, or other students. The problem with these substitutions of proper education are bias, such as familial voting tradition, or misinformation. These consequences can be avoided with a proper post-secondary curriculum that includes even basic political education. To quote Tamara East, chairwoman of the Austrian interest group IG Demokratie, by lowering the voting age, people are dealing with the political landscape at an earlier stage. At the same time, more investment is being made in political education. Thus, a political anchor is set among the young citizens. Austria was the pioneering European country to lower the voting age from 18 to 16 in 2007, a noticeable 14 years ago. But this by no means is a new idea, as both Nicaragua and Brazil have lowered their voting age to 16 in the 1980s. And the predecessor to modern-day South Africa, the South African Republic, lowered the voting age to 16 in 1890. As of today, Argentina, Austria, Brazil, Cuba, Ecuador, Malta, Nicaragua, Scotland and Wales, and the 3 British Crown dependencies, the Isle of Man, Jersey, and Guernsey, have all lowered their voting ages to 16. All of these countries, especially in the case of Austria, have better developed political education systems and curriculums. They've invested in their young citizens, and we youth feel as our government should invest in us. In short, our education is extremely important. Our education is nothing less than vital in the lives of us youth, as we grow and mature, as we integrate into society, and as we support the Canadian economy. We deserve the right to make informed decisions, especially with voting. Youth and adults alike need to be educated on politics, so we can all vote for who we believe will best lead the country and provide a better, brighter future for all of Canada. Now, on to Ethan about political apathy, accessibility, and bias.
Thanks so much, Max. So yeah, as Max said, I'm Ethan, and I'm from West Point Grey Academy in Vancouver. I enjoy participating in Model UN and writing for my student newspaper. So I'm really passionate about ensuring that all citizens are able to meaningfully engage in government institutions and affect policymaking. And yes, today I'm going to be talking about apathy, accessibility, and bias. According to Elections Canada, young people ages 18 to 24 tend to have the lowest voter turnout rates. This suggests the question, why allow even younger people to vote and weaken our democracy? But just because some members of a group may be apathetic towards voting, that certainly does not disqualify the entire group from suffrage. Rather, it then becomes the responsibility of the government to reduce barriers that lead to voter apathy among the younger populations. One of the main barriers to accessibility for youth voting is transportation. Individuals from 16 to 18 often do not have the means to easily get to a nearby polling station on their own. In particular, this affects young Indigenous voters and young voters living in rural areas. There can also be psychological issues that can hinder access and propagate apathy. Voting can be an overwhelming, even scary experience for some. And for others, the notion that political participation and voting are not cool can be a barrier. Thus, I think the term voter apathy is something of a misnomer, because the reason some people feel disconnected from the political process is because the government needs to do more to engage individuals and break down institutional barriers. So at the physical barrier level, increasing access to polling stations in student-friendly places like schools and supporting longer voting hours and early voting, even after the pandemic, to accommodate people's varied schedules, are possible ways to make voting more accessible for youth and all citizens. But more broadly, movements towards digital government can also engage youth voters, considering how tech-savvy our generation is. For instance, a 2017 government-sponsored report from the Center for E-Democracy found that internet voting increased turnout by 3% among age cohorts that currently have the right to vote when implemented in certain municipal elections. Moreover, at the psychological level, promoting nonpartisan information about how to vote and what different parties stand for is key, and should be done through youth-friendly institutions like social media, community centers, televisions, and high schools. But finally, let's talk about bias and external influences. Katie will speak in more detail about peer and parental influence, but I just want to note that external influence is not in any way exclusive to individuals under 18. Everyone's political decisions are shaped by the media and the opinions of our friends, families, coworkers, identity groups, etc. That is, no voter is drawing up a perfect pro-con list that somehow encapsulates the perfect vote free of personal influence. And that's totally fine, because we don't give people the right to vote because they will make totally independent decisions. If anything, we would say that the fact that youth are earlier on in their political socialization process and thus generally have less entrenched views suggests that they may be more open-minded and receptive to arguments about the actual policy issues at play. And even if the political influence parents have over their youth is so strong that in certain cases the youth will always vote with their parents, it's unclear why they would no longer vote the same as their parents once they turn 18. But I want to address one more point, because one could argue that 16 is just as arbitrary an age as 18 for the cutoff. Why shouldn't we make it 15 or earlier? What's the point of changing the voting age if it's going to be arbitrary either way? Well, we would argue that there is evidence that 16 is an important turning point in the mental development of youth in terms of reaching a level of emotional and intellectual maturity. But to be fair, brain development is slightly different for everybody, and any voting age would be arbitrary. What's the justification for lowering it then? Well, we would argue that any imposition on sacred democratic rights must be justified by the state. That is, it is not our responsibility to prove that 16 is a more appropriate voting limit than 18, but the government's duty to prove why they shouldn't grant suffrage to youth aged 16 to 18. 16 may be arbitrary, but it is your duty to justify your intrusion on our right to vote, not the other way around. I'd now like to pass things over to Katie.
Thank you. My name is Katie Tremblay. I'm a 14-year-old student of Exploits Valley Intermediate in Grand Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland, and Labrador. My reason for wanting to participate in this project is because when I look around at the young people around me, and when I look at myself, I see people who care about their future. And when I listen, I hear a chorus of young voices concerned for the issues running rampant in our society. I feel that us young people shouldn't have to wait until our 18th birthday to have a say in these issues that we know and care so much about. And I'm infinitely grateful that I have a chance to participate in this project. I will be talking about how peer and parental pressure influence youth's political views and decisions. If our friend groups or the people around us start saying that voting is lame or uncool, it could well influence many teenagers to not vote or form political opinions at all. The reason behind this is the cool culture that our society is so tangled up in. If being knowledgeable on the political information you need to be a smart voter becomes synonymous with being lame, teens will likely shy away from seeking out that information in favor of keeping some social status they may have. In a survey that we did, the same survey mentioned by Peyton a little while ago, teens place parents as their second biggest influence on their voting opinions and friends and peers as the third. First place going to media or social media if you're curious. This just shows how open to others' views we can be and how much we pay attention to the thoughts of the people around us and let that influence our actions, even on something as big as voting. This influence, as all things, has two sides to it. On one hand, if the discussions are happening starting from a young age, then young people will be more inclined to seek out their own information as they age and mature and begin to form their own views. If younger children are less sheltered from the world of politics, then as young people grow, they won't have to start from scratch with their knowledge, and that hopefully would result in more people being informed on politics than there are right now, seeing it as it is much more daunting to begin to learn something brand new than it is to simply build onto knowledge that is already there. But on the other hand, that very same thing, the early discussions, could end up making the children believe everything their parents say and not being open-minded while forming their own opinions. Even if the things they are hearing from their parents in these discussions are factually incorrect, it will be all they've ever known, and it is terrifying to completely rethink your worldview. So these discussions would have to be very open-minded. In a perfect world, parents would simply be explaining how politics works, the level of government, the process of voting, and try not to make their child believe that they must hold the same views as them as they grow up. Encourage their child to do their own research and give them unbiased ways to seek out the information. However, we know that this is not a perfect world, and unfortunately, some people get very upset when their child begins forming opinions of their own. There's no way to completely abolish the negatives, and there never will be, but it would be a wonderful start to begin with simple things. Begin with starting these discussions with the young people in your life, with making the subject of politics less taboo so the young people around you understand that it is not some forbidden fruit or some useless information to have. Hopefully, hearing the adults around them speaking freely and openly about these types of things will encourage them to ask questions. Maybe ask you, maybe do research of their own. Either way, being curious is good, and wanting more information is good. Having politics be such a forbidden subject does nothing for anyone. It benefits nobody, and it is utterly pointless. So I implore you, start these discussions in your own households, with parents, with children, even with siblings. I'm sure that you would be surprised at how many children already know about it, already care. And those who don't, it's not their fault. It is ours as a society for shunning the topic of politics and for making some kids scared of it. We all care. Let us care and let us learn. Let us vote. We can do it. On to Alexia.
Hi, I'm Alexia Stutzenberger, and I am a grade 11 student completing school online through Rocky View School's Community Learning Center in Chestermere, Alberta. Outside of school, I enjoy dance and taekwondo. I wanted to participate in the Vote 16 project because it is something I care strongly about, and I wanted to help make real change. Although there has been many challenges, I am extremely grateful to have been a part of this project and meet and work with so many amazing people all across Canada. I'm going to be talking about inspiring youth. Although there are an amplitude of issues and possible solutions to our proposed change, one of the greatest challenges faced is the idea that youth are apathetic to the idea of voting, although this has proven to be untrue. By encouraging and inspiring youth, we would have a greater voter turnout and a more accurate representation of the 16 to 18-year-olds' political opinions. In today's society, much of political advertising, both where it is represented and what issues are being posed, is geared towards older adults. Although you want to learn, they may be unaware of where to look. By promoting current political issues on platforms such as Instagram and TikTok, youth will feel more engaged and a drive to expand their political knowledge. It is important to provide easily accessible, factual, and non-biased information to all youth. A very easy way to achieve this is through schools. Social studies classes and beyond need to allow for more open conversation and helpful education about politics. If youth aren't being taught to care in the place they spend 8 hours a day, they may struggle to find motivation outside of school. Another thing that would greatly help inspire youth is creating political groups within schools or areas that teens can easily access. Even so, youth might be inspired to participate in politics, they may struggle to find an outlet to do this. Continuing with this idea, First Nations youth engagement is one of the most important political issues faced. Youth Indigenous meetings, reaching out to elders, and sponsoring events would greatly help First Nations involvement. We are feeling more interconnected than ever, especially after navigating the past year living through a global pandemic. Many of us are feeling a greater drive to make a change in the world, especially after experiencing other powerful youth leaders in action. Although we want to take action, you truly need to understand the huge effects that their actions can have. This will make us more open and interested to making these changes actually happen. Youth are the next generation, and by allowing us to vote at a younger age while in school, we will be set for a bright future ahead. Youth are eager to learn and ready to vote. Even addressing the many concerns presented before us, we were able to find solutions that will have a positive impact on both youth and adults alike, addressing education, advocacy, and influence. With the proper tools and inspiration that comes from teachers, parents, friends, and youth themselves, we can change the future. However, this will not be possible without the help of the government. And so, representing the youth here and all across Canada, we are asking the government to lower the legal voting age from 18 to 16. Now on to Ethan.
Thanks, Alexia. So just to conclude, over several months of a collaborative learning process using the blogs, video conferences, surveys, a national virtual town hall, and a writer's retreat, we turned from individual students at different schools into the group you see in front of you now. We want to thank Senator McPhedran, Taking It Global, and the Center for Global Education for this opportunity to work together on this important issue. And finally, we want to thank you for the invitation to present to you today. Thank you for genuinely listening to our concerns and calls for action and allowing us to express the importance of global cooperation, education, and action. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, young people. That is absolutely phenomenal. Senator McPhedran, weren't they incredible?
I'm just a big smile, so impressed. Merci tout le monde. It was fantastic.
Excellent. So now at this point, we are honored to have our 4 panelists who are here. As Senator introduced earlier, Zachary Robichaud, who is the bilingual member of the Canadian Council for Young Feminists, MP Scott Sims, MP for the writing of Coast of Bays Centre Notre Dame, Sarah Austin, founder and CEO of Children First Canada, and Michael Furdick, the co-founder and director of innovation for Taking It Global. So we're going to go in that order, so to our panelists to offer feedback or questions that you might have for the students. So Zachary, we'll pass to you first.
Oh, OK. Donc, premièrement, merci. Je vais me présenter un peu. Moi, je m'appelle Zachary Robichaud. Comme mentionné, je suis un membre du Conseil canadien de jeunes féministes, où je me concentre particulièrement sur la campagne du vote pour abaisser l'âge du vote à 16 ans, où je travaille côte à côte avec la sénatrice et avec l'aviseur spécial Dave Meslin, qui est aussi présent, pour coordonner une campagne nationale pour abaisser l'âge du vote. Donc, à cause de ça, je suis vraiment content d'entendre de jeunes de ce groupe d'âge-là pour vraiment avoir un peu plus leur perspective, parce que je sais que quelques années passées, j'étais dans ce groupe d'âge-là, puis je travaillais avec, à ce temps-là, c'était la Fédération des jeunes francophones du Nouveau-Brunswick. Mais maintenant, je ne suis plus dans le groupe d'âge, donc c'est un peu past my prime, on va dire. Mais je suis vraiment content de voir qu'il y a une nouvelle relève de gens qui sont passionnés par ce même enjeu, parce que d'après moi, c'est un enjeu qui est très important. J'ai un peu une question sur... vous avez parlé un peu d'apathie politique. J'ai une question plus sur un peu d'où vous croyez ces origines. D'où vous croyez ces origines, cette apathie politique vient de? Est-ce que vous croyez que ça vient un peu de se faire dire que, par les adultes, que la politique, c'est pour les adultes? Est-ce que c'est se sentir ignoré? Je veux un peu avoir votre perspective sur les origines de l'apathie politique. Pas une apathie, parce que c'est pas vraiment une apathie, là, mais...
Great. Thank you so very much, Zachary, for sharing your background and your question. I'm going to pass it over to Mariah to answer the question. Maybe, Mariah, do you want to repeat the question back afterwards in English? But we'll get you to respond. Merci beaucoup.
So the question was, what inspired the empathy in us as young people to be so involved in this initiative, because politics is often an adult issue. So yeah, I'm going to answer the question in French. Donc, je crois vraiment que dans notre société, c'est très prudent, les médias sociaux, et puis une question et un problème de politique est beaucoup plus prudent dans notre société que ce l'était, ça fait 20 années. Lorsque nous avons des réseaux sociaux comme Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, nous n'avons pas de choix sauf d'être impliqués dans les politiques. Tout est entourés de nous. Donc, je pense que comme des jeunes citoyens, je pense que c'est très important d'être impliqué dans les politiques parce que vouloir ou non, il faut être impliqué parce qu'à chaque moment qu'on ouvre nos téléphones ou nos portatifs ou quoi que ce soit, c'est là. Donc, de s'informer sur des gros sujets et d'avoir une opinion et d'avoir des avis sur ces sujets, je trouve que c'est comme un aspect fondamental de notre vie aujourd'hui.
Perfect. Thank you so very much, Mariah, for that response. Oops. Now we are going to go across to our representation from the East Coast, MP Sims. Do you want to share a response or questions that you may have for the young people? Over to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And well, what can I say to start with? First of all, thank you to everyone. Thank you to the Center for Global Education and to Senator McPhedran, who's been such a great person for this. We've had several discussions about this, and Senator McPhedran, I want to thank you for all the work that you've done. Hearing some of these comments, I have to briefly pause because it's music to my heart because of what you have said and how you've laid out your thoughts. First of all, I want to apologize if I don't come across as clearly because I'm in quarantine right now and my internet signal is not that great here in rural Newfoundland. But that being said, just very quickly, this started for me in 2004 as a public issue, as a newly elected member of Parliament. The first vote took place, and at this point, the only vote took place in the House of Commons in 2005. Belinda Stronach, who was former MP and former minister before she became minister, brought it to the House of Commons. And it was one of those private members' bills that received support from all different parties and from all corners of the country. Unfortunately, we did not have the numbers to pass. However, I swore at that point that this would continue. This fight will always continue. And I think that we need the critical mass of numbers to say yes. But on a personal note, when I graduated in high school, I went to Mount Allison University in New Brunswick. And when I got there, 3 weeks later, there was a provincial election in New Brunswick. And it was the first time that I ever voted. I did not know about the candidates. I did not know about the major issues, but I voted because it was the first time in my life that I had a right to vote. And I thought about that for a while, and this is no offense to New Brunswick, to Senator Ringette, by the way, but I wanted to vote. My first vote should have been in my hometown in Bishops Falls, Newfoundland and Labrador, next to Grand Falls, Windsor. It should have been my first vote because I was politically active. I was active from the age of 13. And at 16, I knew I had the wherewithal to cast my vote. And I wanted politicians not to come to my school and say, not just to say, here's what I do as a politician. I wanted them to come to my school and say, I want your vote because it means something. And I think I want to thank both Max and Katie from Grand Falls, Windsor, who brought in some, for everybody for that matter, but Max talked about political education. Think about how if you can vote at 16, you're in high school, you're in the last year of high school, and you can provide programs where you can provide that political education for those people who want to reach out and do this. These are not kids voting at 16. These are young adults who have an opinion. And now, as Katie pointed out, about reaching out on the issues through your parents and now through social media, which we didn't have when I was at that age. And I just want to say thank you to the depth of knowledge that you hold on this call. Because if I had you behind me in 2005, when many of you weren't even born, I think we would have won that vote. And please stay with us on this and hold your member of parliament, hold your provincial member to account on this issue, because after what I've heard today, you deserve it now more than ever. So thank you so much for this. Senator McPhedran, again, I say thank you because you've been such a champion for this, both in the past and now. I don't have a major question, but I do have a comment. Or maybe someone can answer this question. And this is the one I always ask. That whenever you have a skeptic, someone who is an elected official or a member of a registered party who says, no, I don't think 16 is a good age by which you can vote in a federal election, then why is it that all of the major parties allow people to vote for their leaders at the age of 14? That may be a little bit tongue in cheek, but nevertheless, thank you again to all for participating. What a fantastic speeches. Thank you.
Scott, it's Marilou, it's Senator McPhedran. I just want to jump in. Sorry, Terry, I know I'm hijacking the agenda just a little bit, but I want to say something that many have heard me say. If I survive that long, I have at least 5 more years in the Senate, and I promise to all the students on this call and the many more that are building as part of our national campaign, I will always come back. I will always introduce the bill if we don't make it this time around. This is a long game and we're going to get this done. Thank you. Merci.
Brilliant. Thank you so very much, MP Sims, for your questions, for your comments and your insight into a little bit of historical perspective and the vision moving forward. Sarah Austin, over to you for a question or a comment.
Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you, Senator McPhedran, for your incredible leadership on this front and centering the voices of young people in Parliament. And thank you to Taking It Global for facilitating the participation of so many young people on such an important issue.
Sarah, I'm going to interrupt because I just know that what you have to share is so very important. Is it possible that the little white piece that you have, you could just hold it right up to your mouth, because we really do want to hear everything that you have to say?
Yeah, is that any better?
It is. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Senator McPhedran, for your leadership, and thank you to Taking It Global for facilitating this important consultation with young people. And thank you to the hundreds of young people who dedicated your time and energy, and especially the youth presenters. Not surprisingly, you are better educated on these issues than most adults that I meet and talk about these issues with. So thank you for your incredible presentation. Now, there are 2 issues that I want to pick up on from the presentation. First, Ethan, you mentioned that the onus is on the government to justify and to essentially articulate why you shouldn't be able to vote. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms protects the rights of every citizen, the right to vote. And so I wonder, and I know I've spoken with many young people below the age of 16 who think that 16 or 18 is just a number and somewhat arbitrary, some would say. So if we lower the voting age to 16, are we not perpetuating age-based discrimination and violating the charter? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, because I've met young people as young as 6 and 7 and anywhere in between who eagerly want to participate in the political process. And my second question is for Maxwell. You spoke about the importance of political education, and I 100% agree on that. But I also wonder about the importance of rights-based education. In the fall, Children First Canada did a national survey of young people about knowledge of their rights. And half of kids in Canada have never learned that they have rights, and 3/4 don't know what to do if their rights are violated. So I wonder what your thoughts are about including rights-based education along with civic and political education in the school system. Thank you so much.
Great questions. Thanks. So Edison, we're going to pass it to you first. And it is appropriate that we're going right coast to coast in terms of these responses. So Edison, over to you.
Right. Sorry. For the question on our right to vote, I'm not sure if I misheard, but was it meant for me or Ethan?
Oh, I apologize. Sorry, Sarah. I may have, I didn't mean to.
I posted to Ethan, but anyone can answer it.
No, I think you're right, Sarah. And thank you for bringing that up, Edison. Let's go to Ethan for that response.
Oh, okay. So sorry about that, Edison. Yeah, so just to repeat the question, yeah, like, is it not perpetuating like age-based discrimination to lower it to 16 and not further? Just to confirm that, that's the question, yeah. So yeah, I agree. I mean, as I said, 16 is arbitrary too, and ultimately any voting age will be arbitrary. And I think there is an argument certainly for lowering the voting age to an even lower extent. I do think that all democratic rights are part of a balance of rights. And so, to a certain extent, having like a 3-year-old vote may not be within their, expertise or even physical capabilities. But, on a purely principled basis, if you want to like have that stand that, in theory, every single person, no matter their age, should have the right to vote, we would argue that this step isn't perfect. It's not, ending completely that injustice, but it is alleviating that injustice for individuals 16 to 18, which you would argue are the people that are most affected by this, insofar as they're the ones who have the greatest opinions, in most cases, who are the most politically active of individuals under 18. So yes, I would say this isn't perfect. This isn't a perfect principle full of fundamental rights to vote, but we are alleviating the greatest injustice here, which is not having the right to vote for 16 and 18. And I would potentially support efforts to push that further. But for now, I think it's important that we focus on alleviating specifically for that group 16 to 18.
Great, thank you for the response, Ethan. And now let's go across to the other side of the country to Max, in terms of education.
Yes, I believe the question was, if I'm remembering correctly, the question was on the rights of the child and how many students know that. Am I right in saying that?
Well, yes, you spoke about the importance of civic education and political education, and I wondered what your thoughts were about rights-based education for young people.
I think that it's definitely important. As you said, it's not exactly taught to any student unless a teacher out of their own free will does so. A good example of this was barely a month ago, a teacher of myself and Katie sat us down in one of our French classes and explained to us the Charter of Rights and Freedoms of the Child. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, I think is what it is, which are extremely important. And I believe that every class and every student should be taught that. It should be mandatory along with political education. Rights-based education should go hand in hand with it. Both are a matter of politics in some cases. And as for children not knowing what to do when their rights are violated, that also needs to be explained in classes, what you can do, who can you go to. There should, I don't know if there is, but there should be open resources for students and children alike to go to and explain if they feel as one of their primary rights of a child is broken.
All right, thank you, Max. And so we are going to hear from the last of our panelists, Michael Furtick, after which we're going to open it up for questions. And so what I would ask that if you do have a question, if you would like to put your hand up, and then I will be able to moderate that discussion from there. And so once again, we're going to hear from the last of our panelists, and then we're going to open it up to our general participants if they have questions that they would like to ask the students. So please do put your hand up at that time, and then I will be able to come across to you then. Alternatively, you could also ask your question in the chat, and we'll be able to bring it forward that way. So last but most definitely not least, Michael Furtick, co-founder, director of innovation for Taking It Global. Michael, over to you.
Thanks so much, Terry. And it is great to see some of the comments and questions coming in through the chat. So I just want to reflect a little on the fact that, I actually co-founded Taking It Global 22 years ago in 1999 when I was only 17, with this goal of helping students understand and act on local and global challenges. And we've been working now for about 2 decades to champion the voice of youth, like the first youth caucus at the Rio Plus 10 in Johannesburg in 2002. It's been really exciting over the last 12 years or so to work with CGE and Terry and Sarah to involve youth more deeply before, during, and after much of these global policy processes, like the UN FCCC climate change meetings. And I think that by linking this kind of participation to classroom learning, we can strengthen student engagement. And so I was just thinking about what the students were sharing today and how much more relevant and engaging these conversations will be when they can actually follow through at the ballot box and actually know that their their voice counts and voice matters. So when Senator McPhedran discussed the bill with me and the Vote 16 movement, I knew we needed to work together to hear from youth in this way. And it was such a pleasure to see it come together. And I'm also glad, I know they weren't able to be represented on today's call, but we were able, through our Connected North program, where we're supporting 123 schools in remote communities, to include students from Inukjuak High School in Nunavut as well. So I just wanted to echo the comments so far, to thank all the students who joined us. I think you've articulated really well why youth deserve to have a voice at the ballot box. And I have no doubt that the kind of conversations around policy and political engagement will be so strengthened by more active engagement of 16 and 17-year-old youth. I think we've obviously seen how much more connected and informed this generation is with the resources and peers they have access to, representing so many different perspectives through tools like social media and the conversations they're connected to. And I look forward to seeing how this bill will help my own son, who's online learning in the other room at the age of 8, see how his voice counts and is valued when he turns 16. And that was a great point from MP Sims as well. Good to know that at 14, he can maybe have his first vote for party leader. So I don't want to take time away from the group's questions. I just wanted to acknowledge the students, and this is really an exciting moment in our journey. Thank you, Senator McPhedran, for your partnership, and really to Terry and Sarah for leading this this work with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. And I want to jump in just to say that we're having an event with the Inukjuak High School students and their teacher, Mr. McDermott, and their member of parliament, Mumalak Gagak. So that is coming up for us. It was something that we were able to put together when we realized that they weren't able to join us today.
That's awesome.
Brilliant. That's great. All right. So we have some questions coming in here as we approach the top of the hour. Senator Julie Miville-Deschênes, would you like to go first?
Oui, certainement. Et comme on a de la traduction, je vais poser ma question en français. D'abord, je veux vous remercier tous pour vos témoignages très bien documentés. J'ai beaucoup lu sur cette question parce que j'ai participé au débat lancé par Marilou McPhedran, mais de vous entendre, c'est beaucoup mieux. Sachez qu'avec Madame McPhedran, vous avez une défenseur absolument extraordinaire de votre cause. Quand elle prend une cause en main, elle ne la lâche pas. Et c'est la même chose pour le vote à 16 ans. Donc, vous êtes bien représenté au Sénat. Ceci dit, ma question, c'est vous, ceux qui sont intéressés par cette question, quelles sont vos stratégies pour vous faire entendre? Parce qu'un projet de loi privé en particulier, qui est porté donc par un sénateur à l'intérieur, doit être appuyé et on doit entendre la société civile. Donc, on vous entend ici en Zoom, c'est extraordinaire. Je sais qu'il y a une pandémie, mais comment allez-vous réussir à mobiliser une jeunesse, ceux autour de vous, pour que vous soyez entendus dans les médias traditionnels plus largement qu'aujourd'hui? Je sais que c'est une question difficile, mais si vous avez des idées, ça m'intéresserait de les entendre. Je pense notamment, évidemment, au mouvement étudiant des carrés rouges au Québec, qui a été controversé, soit, mais qui a eu une portée et qui a été entendu par les gouvernements. Et c'est ça qui est très difficile dans notre société, d'être entendu parce qu'il y a beaucoup de voix qui s'élèvent.
Great. Thank you so very much, Senator. We'll spread the wealth around a little bit in terms of the responses to the questions. So we have not yet heard from Anushka in Vancouver. Anushka, do you respond? How do you plan to take this amazing work that you have done and to expand it? It's one thing to hear it on Zoom. It's another thing to mobilize your communities around you. Anushka, over to you.
Okay, thanks. That's a really good question. I think we were actually chatting about this in our group the other day in terms of like where we go from here. So I think that one thing that is useful in terms of like specifically advancing kind of the parliamentary side of this is being able to reach out to our local representatives and maybe chat with them. So I know that Ethan and Edison have both been involved in our local MPs like youth council, and so having like a relationship with our local legislators is, I think, something that can be helpful in terms of being able to start more support for this within government. But also just in terms of ensuring more youth are aware of this generally, I also think that something that's useful is just advocating for it within our own community. So sometimes I think that's even just smaller things like having conversations about youth voting. I write a blog, and Ethan and I both write for our school student newspaper. And I think that, even sharing pieces of writing about it are things that can be useful as well. But I guess the last thing I'd say that is that even in a more like indirect sense, there are certainly things we can do in terms of advancing youth voting specifically. But another thing that's just generally useful is looking at ways in which we can ensure that youth are just more politically involved, because voting isn't the only way by which we express political opinions and become engaged, certainly. And so I know that one thing that a lot of us in Vancouver have been involved in is helping to organize and facilitate like model UN conferences. And this year at one of the conferences that Ethan and I were helping out with, we had about 1,000 kids, or maybe somewhere under that, from BC and other provinces who were involved. And so that's not linked to voting specifically, but it's certainly another like platform for youth to be able to express opinions and become more educated, so that even if they're only voting at the age of 18, they just have that much more information to be able to make informed choices.
Great, thank you so very much. Now, friends, we could spend the rest of the day in this fabulous discussion. But we know eventually we have to close this and not just move on to the rest of our days, but move on to putting into action all that we have heard today. So I'll pass it over to the sponsor, Inspire, co-Inspire. We're here with your team of youth from the Canadian Council for Young Feminists. But Senator McPhedran, can you close this off with any insight and the like? Over to you.
Thank you so much. I'll be very brief because people have been so generous and committed to this hour together. I do want to very briefly thank and acknowledge that Cheryl Milne has been on the call with us, that she's the head of the Asper Center for Constitutional Rights, and that she has a court challenge going on. So if anyone who's with us wants to be able to join that, please feel free to contact Cheryl. We're going to be doing everything we can. This can't end here. It won't end here. I want to thank again my parliamentary colleagues for being here and being so engaged. And I want to say to every one of the students and their teachers and our partners, we're just going to keep doing this. We're just going to keep going on and making sure that the national campaign grows. Anyone who wants to be involved is absolutely guaranteed welcome, bienvenue. And let's go forward to the rest of the day, the afternoon and the evening, knowing that together we're going to improve the electoral system in Canada. We're going to build a stronger, more inclusive democracy in Canada, and that is going to help the world. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you, everyone. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Looking forward to connecting to you again soon.